name is Pragna Nidumolu, and I'm the founder of EcoTeens, an initiative that helps raise awareness of climate change and how teens can come together across the globe to do their part in making this world a greener place for them and future generations to live in. As a part of EcoTeens, we launched a podcast called Green Stories to bring diverse perspectives on sustainability and what we all can do as global citizens to address climate change. Today, we have a very special guest in this episode, Kathleen Buckingham. Kathleen is an experienced research lead, skilled in tackling sustainable development and natural resource management challenges. She's a strong research professional with a Doctor of Philosophy or a PhD in Geography and the Environment from the University of Oxford. She's experienced in leading teams and building skills in data analytics and data science approaches to both social and biophysical challenges. She's also familiar with Python and passionate about developing data knowledge and skills. That's a very impressive resume.
Thank you very much. I guess I should introduce my current role. As you said, I'm Kathleen Buckingham. I'm Director of Sustainability for two sister companies, 10 Tree, which is a sustainable apparel company that plants 10 trees for every item of clothing sold, and Tree, which is a blockchain-enabled ground-based monitoring system for restoration.
That's incredible. So jumping into the questions, I mentioned you have a PhD in Geography and the Environment from the University of Oxford, and that's enough to say that you're extremely passionate about the environment. Can you share with us what triggered your passion in this space?
Yes, I guess I haven't prepared for this question, but I went and I lived in China for a number of years. I moved to China in 2002. I was teaching English in the countryside for voluntary services overseas. And in the US, that would be seen as the Peace Corps. So after I graduated, I actually graduated with a degree in fine art. I moved to the countryside in China, and it was quite degraded, and I wanted to understand more about it. So I did distance learning courses in the science of environmental change and environmental sociology with Imperial College London in a distance learning program, just to try and understand more about it. And there were polluted rivers, there was degraded hillsides, and I really wanted to understand more. So in my teaching, I was teaching English. I became the representative for the environment program as a passion project, really. And then that led me to do more voluntary work in China, and also to do a master's in environmental sustainability. And so that's where it started in China.
That's really interesting. And I think that's a great way to start out, and that's amazing. You're a lead at the World Resource Institute, and your work focused on the social impact of forest and landscape restoration. Can you please elaborate on why this is important and also why sustainability is important in general?
So my work at World Resources Institute, I was part of a research team for the Global Restoration Initiative, and you may or may not know, but it's actually the UN Decade for Ecosystem Restoration. So that decade started last year in 2021, and it's running for 10 years because we're really understanding that we need to be focusing on nature-based solutions and their role in climate mitigation, climate adaptation, and for social and human and animal well-being, really. So I would advise you all to look at the UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration and see how you can be part of the movement to really think about not just land, but also the oceans and the role the natural world plays in our everyday lives. I guess when you think about sustainability and why it's important, I would think back to the United Nations again. And I think the original definition of sustainability comes from 1987. So I will quote this, but it means meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And I think to a large extent, that definition has been lost. It's from 1987, and companies tend to see sustainability as doing less harm, not thinking about their relationship with future generations. And I think we really need to reignite that definition and think of it of how can we have a sustainable future that doesn't compromise the ability of future generations to meet their own needs.
I totally agree, because if we don't help build a better future for our future generations, what's left? What's left for them on this planet? I totally agree with that. And yes, we need to build a better bond with the nature in general. Can you share about the mission of Tentry and particularly your work in making these missions possible, since you mentioned it?
Yes, of course. So at Tentry, we plant 10 trees for every item of clothing sold. But we don't stop there. I mean, we want to be part of this movement to be better as a business. I think businesses are trying to do less bad, but what if we created a system where businesses did more good than harm? And we want to be part of that movement. So for example, the apparel industry needs to reduce emissions by about 45% by 2030 to reach climate goals of only a 1.5 degree warming. Now, that seems impossible, but even 1.5 degree warming would be devastating for the planet. So we need immediate action. So Tentry might just be a small company, but what we're working on at the moment is called the restorative agenda. So it's thinking about how could we chart a progress for businesses where we actually do more good than harm. And I think the 10 trees is a part of that. So for example, it has impact in Senegal with agroforestry and food security. We're working on mangroves in Indonesia for climate resilience, to protect from storm surges. We're working in Peru with partners to bring back water to areas that need it. So the trees have a lot of impact. And so you know that if you buy an item of clothes, we're planting 10 trees, but we don't want to stop there, because as a company, we are using resources. We need to reduce emissions, we need to reduce our raw materials, we need to reduce energy, we need to reduce water consumption. So part of our restorative agenda, we're thinking about what can we do to reduce impact with our product, and what can we do to have a planet positive approach to how we can do more good. And that might be through restoration and through various developments. But it's worth noting, you ask about Tentry, we're a climate neutral certified company. So that means that we measure our emissions across our supply chain, from the factory, from when we manufacture to our offices, and anything that we can't change, we offset. So that means we buy offsets for renewable energy elsewhere to deal with the things that we can't change. And also we are a B Corp company, so benefit corporation company, which means that we think about everything from governance to how we impact communities to how we impact our customers. So not just thinking about the environment, but thinking about a more holistic system of how can we be a good business for the people that work for us and for our customers and for all the people in our supply chain. So it's not just thinking about how can we focus on the planet from an environmental perspective, but how can we think about our impact on the planet and all those people in it.
Wow, that is this company is so inspiring. I myself am leaning towards business as a career and entrepreneurship, and I think that is such a inspiring and it's such a impactful company, and it makes such an impact, and it's useful to people too. It's not only helping the environment, you also get clothing. Um, you also said you had another company, Veritree. I'm really interested in climate restoration through technology, and you're a lead at Veritree. So today's teens are engaged with technology for various purposes. How might you suggest that we leverage technology for the adoption of nature-based climate solutions? So how might we use technology for climate change?
I think there's various ways that you can use technology. I mean, one thing that we're leveraging is blockchain technology. And I think what's very exciting about that is it's a mutable ledger, meaning that it's a permanent database. So if we think about how we can make impact for the future, big data is really key for understanding trends, for understanding how we can make change based on data. And I think it all starts with what data can we collect? How useful can that be? What impact could it have on the planet? And so blockchain as a system potentially can help that issue of big planetary data. So, nowadays there's a lot of data that we use through social media channels. How can we use data for good? And I would encourage students and young people to really think about that, because we need innovation within the data space. Data is what we need to instigate change. And at Veritree, by recording data, say planting and survival rates of trees and density, we can start to build up a database about ecosystems. So from our perspective, we'll know in future what soil pH has impacted certain geographies and certain locations with certain tree species. Imagine what we could do with that data in future. So I would encourage everyone to think about, what long-term data could we collect that could have change? Because, for example, with building a database of tree species, of certain locations, of survival rates, in future, maybe we could optimize survival rates in certain locations because we would know the densities and the species and the certain soils. So yeah, I think going down a track and learning more about data, learning how we can use data and what data would be needed to have impact on climate change, I think is really important.
That's so interesting. I think when people think of technology, they think of physical technology such as machines, but data is also really important, like you mentioned, for future generations and for this planet. Um, so you mentioned technology, but what are other ways people can be sustainable in their lives?
I think it's about aligning with your values. So I think choose careers that align with your values, choose to consume from companies that align with your values. And also, I think one thing that's important to think about at the moment is the circular economy. So the circular economy means to reduce waste. So in what ways can you reuse items? What ways can you recycle items? And just thinking about the life cycle of products is really important. I think businesses have traditionally created products for a linear model where it's just about creating and generating more waste. But how could we reuse, recycle, and have a lesser impact on the planet? And so I think innovation is needed in this space because we only have a certain amount of land. We have growing populations on the planet. So how can we use less resources and still meet our needs and think of future generations?
Wow, that's inspiring. I think I agree with you. it's important to, in any way possible, be as sustainable as possible in their everyday lives, and there's so many ways. And my final question is, what is your message to the teen population or the community in general around the world to get their act together in support of sustainability? So what's your message?
Um, I think I would probably use someone else's message. Just to paraphrase Barack Obama, he said, "We're the first generation that will feel the impact of climate change, and the last one that can do anything about it." So I think let's do something about it, and let's think of innovative solutions, because it is a challenge that we can do something about, because we are the last generation that can do something about it.
Wow. I think that's a very strong principle to live by, especially since you said we're the last generation to help this cause of sustainability and push it forward, because in the future, this won't be as big of a problem to people, or people aren't going to take action unless we give them a reason to or help push this cause forward.
I think we have hope. At this stage, we can change the course of the future.
I agree. Thank you so much for joining us today, and it was such a pleasure to talk to you. See you in the next one.